Why did my daughter's ceiling keep leaking when it never rained? Back in our old apartment, there were water stains on my daughter's ceiling that never went away. They grew larger even during the drought. When we asked the landlord, he said it was impossible. There were no pipes above the ceiling. Our 7-year-old Emma's asthma kept getting worse, and within months, she was using her inhaler nightly. That's also when the smell started. Sweet and rotten, like fruit left to die in the sun. Emma would come into our room at night saying her room smelled funny, and we'd find her asleep on our floor by morning. I called contractor after contractor, spent money we didn't have on inspections. They'd come in with their tools and their confidence, tap on walls, check the attic access, then shake their heads. No roof damage, no leaking pipes, no explanation. The landlord went from dismissive to angry, started saying we were problem tenants, that we were making things up to get out of our lease. But then the ceiling started actually dripping, and I mean dripping this thick brown liquid that was nothing like water. We had to put buckets under it, and I'd empty them twice a day, trying not to gag at the smell. The drops ruined everything they touched. Emma's stuffed animals, her drawings on the wall, that little white dresser we painted together when she turned 6. Everything got these brown stains that wouldn't come out no matter how hard we scrubbed. Other tenants started complaining about a smell in the hallways, and the landlord blamed us, said we must be hiding something, cooking something, keeping secrets. What really bothered me was the upstairs neighbor. I hadn't seen him in months, and his mail was piling up so bad the mailman started leaving notices. Amazon packages sat by his door for weeks. His car never moved from its spot in the garage, had leaves piled up on the windshield. When I mentioned this to the landlord, he just waved it off, said the guy traveled for work, was probably in China visiting family. Emma's coughing got worse every week. She'd wake up gasping, fumbling for her inhaler in the dark, and my wife Christina would sit with her, rubbing her back while she wheezed. The pediatrician kept upping her medications, but nothing helped. She was losing weight, had these dark circles under her eyes that made her look hollow. That Saturday morning, Emma couldn't breathe at all. Her lips went blue and she was clawing at her throat. The ambulance ride felt like hours. The ER doctor pulled us aside after looking at her x-rays and said words I'll never forget. There's severe fungal growth in her lungs. One more exposure could be fatal. I drove home like a man possessed and grabbed the biggest crowbar I could find. When I ripped open that ceiling, the smell that hit me was unlike anything I'd ever experienced. Behind the drywall, the wooden beams were soaked with this black, viscous fluid that clung to everything like tar. It wasn't water, wasn't sewage, it was something else entirely. The insulation was black and soggy, completely saturated with this stuff, and all of it led to one spot directly above where Emma's bed used to be. I called a restoration company, told them we had severe contamination, maybe sewage backup, I didn't know what. They showed up in full hazmat gear, looking like something out of a disaster movie with their white suits and respirators. They set up these plastic barriers around everything, brought in machines to clean the air. The team leader, this guy Alric, took one look at his moisture readings and whistled low. This is something else, he said, and cut a bigger hole to get a camera up there. On the monitor, we could see into the apartment above. The floor was covered in pools of black liquid, just sitting there, slowly seeping through our ceiling. There were no broken pipes, no water damage, just this viscous fluid pooling everywhere. Alric said we needed to get up there immediately, that this was beyond anything he'd seen in 20 years of restoration work. The landlord showed up screaming about the trucks, the damage to his property, threatening lawsuits. But when Alric showed him the video feed and told him the health department was getting involved, he went quiet. His hands shook as he unlocked the upstairs door, and I remember thinking he knows something. He absolutely knows what's up there. The restoration team went in first while I waited in the hallway, but even from there, the smell was overwhelming. They moved through the apartment slowly until they reached the bathroom, and then everything stopped. Alric came back out white as paper and told me to call 911 immediately. Don't ask questions, just call them now. The police arrived in minutes. The detective who came out of that bathroom looked like he'd aged 10 years. He told us the tenant had been deceased for approximately 6 months, that the body in the bathtub had been decomposing all that time, and the fluids had been leaking through our ceiling. Everything that had dripped on Emma's toys, her bed, everything she'd been breathing in for months was human remains. I stood there trying to process this while Christina vomited in bushes outside, but then the detective started asking different questions. When had the landlord last seen the tenant? Who'd been collecting his mail? That's when everything unraveled. They pulled bank records showing the landlord had been entering the apartment monthly, depositing the dead man's disability checks, paying bills from his account. He'd known about the body and had been spraying air freshener and running the AC to mask the smell and slow decomposition while my daughter breathed in death. When we next saw him, he was in jail. I remember going to visit him to ask why, maybe get some closure, but that's when he said something that sent chills down my spine. Check on your Emma. She might not make it past the next few months. Full story on channel linked below.